What would it take to DIY build a system that would allow us to drive our electric car for free? Meaning, if we built this DIY solar system, how many years would it take to pay the system off, and how many years would we get to drive for no fuel cost whatsoever? First, I have to warn you, this is a little bit of a long video. In fact, it's the longest video you're allowed to make. And the reason I'm doing it this way is the platform, it really rewards shorter videos because the platform looks to see how long people watch a video. So if you make a long video, most people won't watch it all the way through. So the platform sort of punishes long form videos. That's why you see so many part 6 of 30, part 4 of 8. But I know that's aggravating. So I'm making it one long video, but I'm going to put these little dividers in here. And that way you can scroll along the bottom and look for those dividers and find the section you're interested in instead of having to go find all the parts. And by the way, I'll tell you the price right now so you don't have to watch the whole video. The system as designed is about $6,400. If you want to see how I came up with that, you can go through these numbers with me, but I don't want you to have to sit through the whole video if you just want to see what it would cost to build the system. And one more little bit of housekeeping. I'm a solar and electric car enthusiast, not an evangelist. An evangelist is someone who wants to convince other people to do what they're doing. An enthusiast is someone who's just super into something, but doesn't really care whether or not other people do it. So don't read any of this as me trying to convince you to drive an electric car or build a solar system. It's just what I'm hyper focused on right now. It's not maybe a fit for you at all, but my goal isn't to convince anyone that this is the right thing to do. It's to try and look at the numbers objectively. And that's why we're going to look at real numbers. So I want to look at like miles per kilowatt hour. Miles per kilowatt hour is one of the most important numbers when we're designing a system to provide the energy for our electric car. Or even if we're buying an electric car, you have to figure out like how many miles do I really expect? It's the miles per gallon of the electric car world. So I can tell you I've had my 2019 Nissan Leaf for about 2 months now. And in the city, I get about 3.8 miles per kilowatt hour. And that's like, for my 40 kilowatt hour battery, it's like 130 miles of range on one charge, which is great for me. It's good. When I'm driving on the highway though, I get like 2.8 miles per kilowatt hour. If I'm driving on the highway into the wind, I get like 2.4 miles per kilowatt hour. So for this system that we're going to design today, we're going to assume that you get 2.6 miles per kilowatt hour in your car. It's not worst case, but it's kind of like bad case. Because I don't want to build a system that's going to work in some blue sky, happy path scenario that no one is ever going to experience. So this system should support someone who drives a car like mine, but they have to drive on the highway every day, which is a not worst case scenario, but bad case scenario. Let's design the system and pull some numbers together. So let's take a look at some basic numbers just to start building the system. Let's assume that you're driving about 18,000 miles per year. And let's assume that you're paying 13 cents per kilowatt hour. I have to assume that because that's what I pay. And that's not the number they tell me on the bill. That number is nonsense. I just take my bill and divide it by the number of kilowatt hours I used. That's how I get 13 cents. It's actually 13.2 cents. So if you're driving 18,000 miles per year and your car gets 2.6 miles per kilowatt hour, you're going to need 6,923 kilowatt hours per year of energy. So let's design a system using that produces that much energy. So let's take a look using Open Solar, which is a free platform that a lot of solar installers use to design these systems. And this system was designed assuming you're in the Midwest. I'm designing this system in Ohio, so it assumes that I have the sun power of Ohio. So I put in my energy. So my energy needs are 6,923 kilowatt hours per year. And so I just started adding solar panels to the system until I hit that number. So 12 of these particular panels are Blue Suns 460 watt panels. 12 of them will produce 103% of my solar need. This system was designed assuming that you're going to have net metering. And I want to walk briefly through what is net metering. Sometimes it's called SRECs, S-R-E-C-S. And net metering is basically the utility company paying you for energy you generate that you don't use. So they give you a credit for any surplus energy you use. And those credits can be applied on those less sunny months where you're not generating enough energy to cover your usage. And here's an example of the consumption versus production line chart under net metering. So here in January, let's start here in March. In March, I overproduced. So I get a credit for this little difference between the gray area and the yellow area. In April, I overproduced. I overproduced all the way up until October. So now I have all of these extra credits sitting on my electric bill account. But then in November, I underproduce. December, I underproduce. In January, I underproduce. So now I'm drawing on these credits. I'm drawing these credits down from my electric company. And then I'm back into overproduction again. If we didn't have net metering or SRECs and we had to produce all of the energy we needed every month and there were no credits and you couldn't use the grid like a battery, that's basically how it works out, you'd have to build a system that's 173 here in Ohio, 173% of your need. And here you can see I almost cover my usage in January, a little over in February, but look at all this wasted quote unquote energy, because it's energy I'm not using, but I'm producing in these sunnier months, just so that I can keep these darker months, even to where I'm generating as much as I'm using. All right, so let's just look at the numbers. What's a system like this cost? What are we going to pay to build a system like this on our own, a DIY solar system? And I know it's a little hard to see over here, but this system with the 12 panels, the inverters, the racking system, the wire, the conduit, disconnects, all that stuff, all the major components and some of the minor components would cost around $6,273 to build yourself. And that includes things like here in Ohio, I'd pay $450 to $500 in fees and, like permit fees and things like that. So what's the ROI look like? How many years would we have to pay for this system in order for us to get into that free energy window? Well, going back to our spreadsheet, if we paid $6,400 for the system, compared to paying for the gas, it would take 2.6 years to break even. If we just paid for the electric and, we just had an electric car and we paid for electric, it takes 7 years to pay for the system. A system like this should last at least 15 years. Most of the components are warranted for 20 to 25 years. But let's imagine the system lasted 10 years. You'd get 3 years of free driving versus electric. And whatever that is, 7 years versus gas, which is pretty crazy.